Welcome, esteemed history enthusiasts, to a dark tale of power, gold, and absolute conquest. We picture the Mongol hordes as mindless beasts, reducing every grand city to ash. Legends claim their massive empire survived purely by looting wealth from countless vanquished foes. But how could a ruthless nomad army afford to pay hundreds of thousands of soldiers? The shocking truth is that they masterminded the first global economic trade network. For centuries, Western history has painted the Mongols as nothing but savage raiders. Chroniclers described dark clouds of merciless cavalry sweeping across the endless, peaceful plains. They were seen as the ultimate wrath of God, sent to punish the civilized world without mercy. Wherever their fearsome horses marched, towering walls and magnificent castles fell to ruin. According to ancient records, mighty cities were reduced to nothing but smoldering ash. People believed that Genghis Khan sought only to burn, destroy, and take everything in his path. The popular narrative insists they thrived simply by draining prosperous nations entirely dry. Imagine mountains of plundered gold and silver, stripped from the fallen warriors of battle. They supposedly loaded countless wagons with stolen treasures before moving to the next target. This image of endless destruction remains deeply burned into our collective human memory. We visualize ruthless commanders standing triumphantly over the broken remains of empires. They allegedly left behind vast wastelands where thriving centers of commerce once proudly stood. The terror they inspired was so profound that entirely new myths of monsters were quickly born. But let us pause and deeply question this heavily biased narrative written by their enemies. Could an empire built solely on mindless violence survive and flourish for multiple generations? Looting a captured city provides only a temporary burst of wealth and fleeting glory. A pile of stolen treasure cannot possibly sustain a massive continental war machine. Once the final city was burned and looted, what economic foundation would remain to feed them? Armies of that unprecedented scale required massive and consistent logistical support. You simply cannot maintain hundreds of thousands of hungry soldiers on stolen artifacts alone. Furthermore, they employed highly skilled engineers who built complex siege weapons entirely from scratch. These specialized workers required regular payment, housing, and reliable daily provisions. The sheer mathematics of their expansion required a vastly superior financial strategy. To conquer the known world, the Mongols needed an endless river of sustainable resources. The old myth of the mindless barbarian looter falls apart under logical scrutiny. They possessed a deep understanding of wealth generation that historians long ignored. We must look beyond the bitter, war-torn battlefields to discover their administrative genius. Behind the fearsome masks of war, they were systematically building an economic masterpiece. The swords they wielded so fiercely were actually clearing the path for something so much greater. The fire they brought was meant to forge a newly unified world, bound by absolute financial order. Deep within the quiet command tents, a very different kind of strategic war was taking place. Modern scholars argue that Genghis Khan possessed a truly brilliant macroeconomic vision. He understood that fallen peasants and ruined markets could never pay continuous long-term taxes. A burned city is a worthless asset that drains resources rather than providing lasting wealth. Therefore, the initial shocking aggression was often a tactic to force rapid surrenders. Once a region submitted to his ultimate authority, the violence completely stopped. The Great Khan quickly transitioned from a ruthless conqueror to a pragmatic administrator. He actively sought out scribes, accountants, and merchants from every recently conquered territory. These educated officials were tasked with creating detailed tax registries across the empire. The Mongol leadership realized that consistent taxation was the true secret to endless power. They established a remarkably complex administrative network managed by foreign experts. Local markets were carefully protected and stimulated to produce maximum tax revenue. The fearsome Mongol warriors were fundamentally repurposed to act as elite global police. They heavily guarded the vital trade routes, eliminating local bandits who disrupted commerce. Genghis Khan essentially created the safest and most efficient highway system on all the Earth. This massive security operation required an incredibly complex logistical framework. To solve this, they implemented the YAM system, a revolutionary postal supply network. Relay stations were built a day's journey apart, fully stocked with fresh horses, food, and warm shelter. Exhausted messengers could quickly swap mounts and continue riding on through absolute darkness. This allowed imperial commands and crucial market data to travel at unprecedented speeds. The YAM system was an incredibly expensive infrastructure project that required massive funding. Stolen treasure could never cover the permanent maintenance costs of these countless relay stations. The funding had to come from a highly reliable and continuously flowing golden river. That river was the ancient Silk Road, which the Mongols had completely brought under one single rule. For the first time in human history, a single legal code governed the entire Eurasian land. The famous Yasa law punished the theft of commercial goods with immediate, fatal judgment. This strict legal environment fostered a sudden and massive explosion of global commerce. Merchants quickly realized that the Mongol Empire was the most profitable place to do business. The Khans were not destroying the civilized world. They were aggressively reorganizing markets. They understood that the true power of an empire lies entirely in controlling global trade. The sword was merely the necessary instrument to establish a profitable monopoly. If you held absolute power over all global trade, how would you maximize your incredible profits? The Mongols chose a strategy of aggressive state-sponsored capitalism to multiply their vast wealth. They moved far beyond simple taxation and began actively investing in commercial ventures. This profound shift in economic policy completely changed the fundamental course of history. To maximize their wealth, the empire built powerful merchant associations, known as the Ortogh. The Mongol state provided massive, low-interest loans directly to these chosen merchant groups. In return for state funding and absolute military protection, the merchants shared their profits. This brilliantly allowed the nomadic rulers to directly benefit from international commerce. The Ortogh merchants became incredibly wealthy and powerful figures in the imperial court. They were granted the legendary paisa, a solid gold tablet that guaranteed safe passage. A merchant wearing a golden paisa could demand fresh horses and supplies at any yam rest station. They traveled under the direct and absolute protection of the Great Khan's fearsome military. This era became widely known to modern historical scholars as the Pax Mongolica. The unprecedented Mongol peace allowed precious goods and ideas to freely cross the whole world. The once dangerous ancient routes became incredibly safe for all international travel. A famous proverb claims a virgin carrying a sack of gold could walk entirely unharmed. They could journey across the massive continent without ever fearing greedy highway robbers. This remarkable level of security was completely unimaginable in Europe. The Mongols deliberately kept their commercial tax rates surprisingly low and very fair. They preferred a high volume of global trading over taxing a few isolated merchants. This visionary approach actively encouraged traders from every corner of the known world. Caravans carrying precious silks, vibrant spices, and brilliant ideas flooded the busy roads. Islamic scholars, Christian monks, and Chinese engineers freely exchanged their boundless, deep knowledge. Cultural integration became the highly profitable byproduct of their trading network. They built magnificent new cities, designed specifically as thriving global marketplaces. These bustling desert hubs were filled with diverse languages, exotic goods, and foreign currency. The Great Khan's administrators carefully monitored every transaction for total fairness. Fraud and commercial deception was swiftly punished by the highly disciplined Mongol army. It was a rigorously enforced capitalist paradise, born right from nomadic conquest. Foreign ambassadors were continually astonished by the overflowing wealth of the courts. They witnessed mountains of exquisite foreign textiles and brilliantly polished precious, shiny stones. The sheer scale of their international commerce dwarfed any previous empire in history. Even the famous Venetian explorer Marco Polo was captivated by their power. He documented a society where commerce was the primary lifeblood of their army. The Mongols essentially operated the world's first successful multinational system. They understood that global economic interdependence was the greatest weapon for peace. A conquered nation, heavily tied to the imperial trade network, would never dare rebel. The threat of losing access to the lucrative Silk Road was more terrifying than a sharp sword. Economic integration proved to be the ultimate tool for achieving absolute control. As the empire evolved into the Yuan dynasty, Kublai Khan introduced a new concept. Managing thousands of tons of heavy silver and gold coins had become inefficient for them. They needed a much faster and significantly lighter medium of exchange for trading. The revolutionary solution was the implementation of paper fiat money. The Chao, their official fiat currency, completely transformed the economic landscape. Kublai Khan decreed that foreign merchants must surrender all precious metals to the treasury. In exchange, they received beautifully printed paper notes that were universally accepted. This brilliant monetary policy gave them absolute control over the money supply. They essentially established the foundational principles of our modern central banking. If anyone refused the paper money or attempted forgery, the punishment was fatal. The intrinsic value of the paper was guaranteed by the might of the Mongol army. This system allowed the empire to effortlessly extract wealth from its vast territories. They could literally print the money needed to fund massive public works and endless campaigns. The imperial treasury overflowed with precious metals, while paper circulated freely. It was an economic masterstroke that left visiting European scholars amazed. Marco Polo marveled at how the great emperor had discovered the secret of alchemy. High-ranking financial mandarins meticulously calculated complex interest rates. They managed inflation and currency values with surprising modern sophistication. They successfully transitioned from ruthless conquerors to extremely shrewd financial leaders. Their massive war machine was now entirely dependent on the steady flow of global trade. Every single campaign was carefully calculated to open highly profitable markets. They conquered fiercely, not to simply destroy the world, but to rapidly integrate and tax it. The Pax Mongolica was an iron-fisted globalization built on commercial profit. We must completely rethink our historical understanding of these sophisticated nomads. Though undeniably severe, they laid the profound economic foundations of our modern world. Without their vast empire, massive global trade networks might have been delayed for many centuries. They forcefully connected East and West through a brilliantly orchestrated financial system. The devastating conquests they wielded ultimately served the continuous flow of profit. Their incredible legacy is not just written on battlefields, but stamped on ancient gold coins. The Mongols were the terrifying, effective pioneers of early global capitalism. Their unprecedented methods forever altered how human societies exchange resources. We must learn to see beyond the myth of the mindless savage and deeply analyze the hidden truth. Was Genghis Khan a ruthless warlord or a visionary architect of global free trade? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let us debate the true cost of civilization. Please subscribe, like, and share this video to uncover many more hidden historical truths.